Welcome back to the Digby Model Railway in Digby, Nova Scotia. We're not currently in Digby, Nova Scotia. We're in my mother's office down on the islands. But, it is what it is. The show will go on. And today, we are looking at a station. You've probably already guessed it by the name of it on YouTube, but I'm still going to do the same old. Built in 1868 in the Gothic style. This station originally serviced the Windsor and Annapolis Railway, then the Dominion Atlantic Railway, Canadian Pacific Railway after that, and lastly Via Rail, until they replaced it with another station. But we'll get on to that. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the Kentville Railway Station. This station was originally the headquarters for the Windsor and Annapolis Railway. The first train that came through this station would have been on June 26, 1869. The railway would have been declared open August 19th, 1869. The first several trains to stop at the station were trains that were bringing people of importance to a picnic at the Kentville station to celebrate the grand opening. Even though these trains were running and servicing passengers, the Avon and Gasborough bridges weren't just complete just yet. So even if we have these two bridges down, they were still getting things done. This is actually kind of funny. Freight surged down the line when everything opened, and they were getting so much freight coming on these trains because everybody's like, oh hey, you know what? I don't have to do this by horse and buggy anymore, and this doesn't have to go, back country where it might take up another week or so if the carriage breaks. I can put it on a train and have it there tomorrow. So the freight was just pouring through the railway, and it was getting up to Annapolis, and there they were having problems. The amount of freight that they were getting out of port, they couldn't get more freight onto the boats. The amount that was going out was being doubled as it was heading out. So freight was backed up in Annapolis rather quite quickly. And despite all this freight going, the railway lacked financially. So there was a huge demand for this railway, but they weren't making the money they thought they were going to be making, which is a shame, really. When everything started coming together, though, everything had finally got put together. Everybody got organized. The station went on to act as a divisional and corporate headquarters to the whole railway, as well as a passenger terminus, a baggage area, and a telegraph office. So this building was going on, as it were. In 1889, they looked at the baggage room and they said, you know what, mate? This isn't big enough. We're going to add another 30 feet to it. And so they did. And then in 1904, somebody was just looking at the station and said, you know what would look good up there? The Central Tower. And while we're at it, listen. All around platform awnings. And some guy said, you know what? I like your idea. Let's add 40 feet of extended platform west. How's that? And everybody's just like, yeah, sure. And that's just what happened. And then in 1920, the guy had forgot what he said about the extension of the platform. Said, you know what, guys? I don't think this is big enough. let's add 40 feet of platform. And some guy said, yeah. Well, we'll add 6 dormers west as well. And the station just got bigger. And that station stayed pretty well the same up until the demise of, well, I'd like to call the demise of the railroad. Anyways, moving on. The station was originally painted in a straw yellow with a dark red trim, which is a paint job that you consistently see across the Dominion Atlantic Railway. This was the railway's colors. Until 1940, it was changed to dark red with black trim. Years later, the awnings were eventually cut back, and offices started to slowly become vacant. And this was around the time that CP was centralizing their operations in Quebec. But before we get into the 1970s plus, let's get into some of the other buildings around the station, and then we're going to talk about what happened to this station and the horror that came with it. So, besides the station, there were several other facilities that would have serviced this town, railway-wise. There was a roundhouse, coaling tower. We're gonna add the machine shop into the roundhouse just because, as well as the Cornwallis Inn. Starting off with the roundhouse / machine shops. The first 3-stall engine shed was built in 1868, and it would have again serviced steam locomotives across the Dominion Atlantic Railway, and just made sure everything was a-okay. Until the engine shed and some of the machine shop burnt down in 1915. 2 engines were destroyed also in this fire. Engines 12 and 22. 1916, they built a 6-stall roundhouse and rebuilt what they could of the repair shops. Until in 1925 or 26, this large storm came through and ripped the roof off, and some guy who obviously knew what he was doing. Some guy just looked at it and said, you should rip that wall out. And then add like 4 more stalls and then put the roof back on. And that would solve a lot of problems around here. And that's just what they did too. So now we're looking at a 10-stall engine shed or roundhouse. The turntable servicing the roundhouse was a 30-foot Canadian Pacific designed turntable. The original one, mind you, had a covered platform. The machine shops would have serviced engines up until 1961, or the end of the steam era. And when the roundhouse closed, they started storing apple juice in this roundhouse, and it just became a apple juice warehouse. This roundhouse would have been the last one to exist in Atlantic Canada. And in 2007, there was all sorts of protests about this, mind you. The mayor's office decided that the roundhouse was an eyesore, so they had it destroyed. There was also the coaling tower. It was built in December of 1943, concrete, and it could hold 60 tons of coal, which is perfect. The engines that, were using this coaling tower originally were using a crane and scoop, so instead of having to, load it with a small bucket and this crane taking possibly an hour, they could just pull up to this and, it's like, all right, dump it. It was perfect. And this coaling tower was the only one on the Dominion Atlantic Railway. In Yarmouth, they would have had the crane and scoop going on, but they never got themselves a tower. And in 1961, after the end of steam, or ish, and around there, the tower was used for security lights, so floodlights. And in 1990, it would have been dismantled and completely and utterly destroyed. Lastly, we have the Cornwallis Inn, or other known as the Aberdeen Hotel. It was owned by Daniel MacLeod and was the end-all of the hotels. Anybody who was anybody went to this hotel and stayed there during their stay in Kentville. It was a wooden Second Empire-style hotel built in 1892. Eventually was bought in 1919 by the Dominion Atlantic Railway, renovated, landscaped, and renamed the Cornwallis Inn. And in 1930, Canadian Pacific Railway had built a new hotel in the baronial style. It operated as a hotel until the 1970s, and now it houses 30 businesses and is a hub for activity again in Kentville. So, one good thing that came out of all this. Focusing back to the station, now that we're talking about, today. In 1970, the dispatch office closed at the station and had moved over to Quebec. And CP took over the operations there. In 1988, Via Rail removed passenger services from the old station and put them in a new brick structure with a wooden tower, which kind of echoed the old station. They built that for $240,000. It opened in June of that year, and it was used for a year and a half before the entire railway went under, or the big snip by CP. The station was demolished in 1990, and the new station was bought by the town of Kentville. It was first used as a bus stop. Later, the Historical Society had purchased it, and later the Historical Society had used it. And now the entirety of what I just told you, and then some, is now located in this building. From what I hear, they do have like a small display in there for the old station itself, and so on and so forth. Yeah, at least, something got saved from this place. I don't mean the station that was used for a year and a half. I mean, like, the hotel is still there. I'd have rather seen the original station and whatnot, but time moves on and life moves on, and now it's up to us to preserve this history. So anyways, with that being said, I'm Nick Barnaby of the Digby Model Railway here in Digby, Nova Scotia. And while it was nice using my mother's office, she has work to do, and I'm kind of getting a bit hungry. Have a good day.
Eat your heart out, Reynolds.